Yes, welcome to Chatting Up the Chick, a podcast with a twist. Yes, you've heard me right. This is episode 3, and I am here with the incomparable, the magnificent, the devilishly handsome, the quintessential man of the ages, the professor himself, Angus Hornigold. Welcome to Chatting Up the Chick.
Hey Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Can you not tell by my intro?
Well, that's what had me worried for a moment. You detached from reality.
No, I do. Just for 20 seconds. Completely detached.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
Okay, there you go.
I've got this. I can't really give much of an intro to this man. Apart from he's a good wingman in a pub.
Oh yeah, and you're a great pilot, great lead pilot.
No, today's subject, which has been chosen by my fabulous interviewee. I don't know, what are you? You're not a host. You're
your friend. Let's say friend. My friend.
My friend is veganism. Of which I am extremely excited about this conversation because I am, I suppose, what you would call a part-time vegan, and it will be interesting to find out how much I actually fail in pursuit of what is veganism. So to get this conversation started, I've got me 5 questions. You got your 5 questions?
I've got 5 questions, but before we begin, Chris, it just occurred to me now, as you said, about how much you fail. And this is not really a reflection on you, but it does raise the question of of what is veganism. And I guess there's a sort of very ethical side, right, where people don't wear leather and they wouldn't want to buy a car with leather seats, and they'd be very aware of all these aspects. They'd make sure their toothpaste hasn't been tested on animals, and their makeup and all this type of thing. And that maybe should be distinguished from sort of, I guess, more what we would be, which is more plant-based, I suppose, as best we can.
Yes. So thank you for answering my first question.
Call me psychic.
Yes. How did you know? I'm certainly class myself, though I do hate giving myself a label. But if I was to give myself a label, it's definitely plant-based. Food.
Yeah, I think I would be as well. I think that would be more accurate. That would be more accurate, I think.
But as I found out the last time I saw you, I failed miserably because we went to go and buy some beers, and I didn't realise that you could get vegan and non-vegan beers. I was just like, what is this world turning into?
Well, and I believe with wines as well. I mean, wines have got the same thing, right? So your wines will have
the grape on the vine. Are you crazy?
No, I mean, many of them use, I think it's the same product. I'm not quite sure what it is, but it's something to cause it's a flocculant they use, which is an animal-based flocculant. Is that the right word, flocculant?
I don't know, it sounds almost like a swear word, so it could be right.
Could be right. It causes whatever the stuff in suspension to settle, to become sediment. And that's often animal-based. I think it might be fish-based, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that was what... sorry, my wife just walked in the room and she doesn't realise that I'm recording, so I was giving her the finger. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, you were talking about some fish-based to help the fermentation process. Is that right?
Well, it's cool. I thought it was to cause the stuff in suspension to settle.
Oh, okay.
I'm no expert.
But it's got some was it flocculant?
Yeah, slowly with that word.
Hang on, where's Google? Where's Google? Flocculant. Jeez,
flocculant too.
Yeah, I won't want to see the images that come up. So the second part of the question, because obviously you've kind of answered what is a vegan to some degree. Why are you a plant-based vegan?
Type person. It's I guess I never thought about it, Chris. What happened was that I'd always subscribed to a particular idea of what is healthy eating. When I was younger and injury-free,
Oh, geez, I think he's either suspended in animation or the New South Wales police have just broken into his hotel room and stolen him away. Is that right, Angus? Yes, Chris. That's completely right. Well, who would have Adam and Eve it, eh? Who would have Adam and Eve it? You can close your mouth now, son. You can close your mouth. No one wants to see that kind of expression. Hello? I think you might have died. That'll suck. Yes. So why are you a vegan? Come on, I need to know.
Okay. All right. So what happened was, as you can imagine, I was raised in a Seventh-day Adventist household. So I was kind of vegetarian.
I feel your pain.
You do, okay. No, it was much as you probably experienced that it was sort of we like smoke. We like people who don't smoke except for cigarettes and pipes.
Yes.
We don't eat meat except for except for fish and chicken.
Yes.
So I'd sort of been raised with that background. And then I started to eat meat, and I did for the longest time. I was sort of aware of nutrition. I was never a serious athlete, but I was someone who tried to run daily. That was prior to my injuries. So then Madison, my daughter, went vegan, and that kind of got me thinking about it. And that's when I started to read books by runners like Scott Jurek, the guy who did the. What is that? I can't see it.
My wife just gave me a note. What is Angus's Australian cell number? You could have given that to me later. What's wrong with you? Jeez, you just interrupted him. He was on a rant. Sorry, you were saying.
Then I read the books by Scott Jurek, which is, I think, Born to Run? Anyway, it's Scott Jurek's book. He's the guy he won the most sort of ultra marathons in history, I believe. He's that guy who's just ran the Appalachian Trail, broke the record for the northbound run.
Yeah. I think he was on the Rich Roll podcast, wasn't he?
He might have been, but
yeah,
I don't know. But Scott Jurek's a really interesting guy, and he's vegan, and that got me thinking. And then so was Rich Roll, and after that, I decided I'd give it a go, and that was my kind of a turning point for me. And since then, I've been doing my best to be plant-based, and for the most part, I think I'm relatively. I'm sort of keeping on the straight and narrow, yeah.
So in regards to like the differences within your own experience, going from eating meat to just going plant-based, what changes happen to you? Obviously, you don't have to talk about your anatomical or physiological changes that you can't.
Really, I'd like to tell you about my penis.
Is that vegan?
Yes. Well,
I'm going to have to put a disclaimer on this before it goes out to the world.
It's weird though. I don't know if you saw that movie, that recent big vegan movie about the guy who got bigger erections since he
Oh,
got
really?
plant-based.
Oh, okay. That was no.
You
I
have
must.
seen that big uh, the one that it was filmed by the guy who won Ultimate Fighter.
Oh, you're talking about Game Changers.
Game Changers, that's the one.
Yes.
They had the erection scene in Game Changers.
Oh, well, that one
That
slipped
wasn't
me by.
really. You must watch it again. That was a turning point when the guy described his much bigger and better erection. I just like to say that hasn't been my experience. But
Love, I'm going vegan.
but weirdly, my biggest problem has been keeping off weight. I've put on weight as a vegan.
Oh,
And I
interesting.
think,
Well, have you started eating more, or?
when I wasn't plant-based, I was very, very careful about what I ate because it made a big difference. A little bit too many calories and weight would just come on really quickly. And I think being plant-based, once eating more and getting less calories, so I was a lot less focused on quantity, and I started to put on weight. But that was fine. I mean, it's not a bad thing.
Oh, it was because how old would you have been? Because maybe that's an age thing. Not that you're old, but I mean,
Yes, it could be an age thing because I'm getting old. So I'm now, how that would have been about at the age of 48, I guess, 48,
okay.
49.
Because
Yeah.
I've noticed when I've gone plant based, like I find it really difficult to put on weight. Like like I just joined the gym before this lockdown, and
Oh,
in
one money well spent.
well, I thought to myself, like turning 40, I thought I need to get my body into some sort of good condition,
Right.
so I can maintain it throughout the latter years, rather than waiting until I know I'm 60 and I'm like, oh no, I need to start taking
Yeah.
drastic action. I might as well do something now.
Yeah. By then the rudder's broken. You can't
Yeah,
turn it
yeah,
forward.
yeah.
You're just taking along with the tide.
There's no hope of the pole going upright, you know.
Unless you go plant-based, apparently then your pole does go upright a lot more easily.
But what I realised was like trying, like I don't want to bulk up and be some sort of muscle man, but I certainly know
Oh,
knowing
go on,
no
do it.
no geez no knowing that muscle does weigh more than fat, and anyway, I thought working hard because I'm still doing quite heavy lifts and stuff like that. And I think over a 6 week period, I put on about half a kilo. But so I think I've had this issue all my life, because I've always been tall, slim, and slender, and never really, even in my youthful days when I was drinking like a fish, eating rubbish food, I never really got heavy. It might be the fact that I've got worms to to some degree that I just can't
It
really
could have
see.
something to do with it. No,
Yeah.
but it is. Look, that's the curse or blessing of genetics, right? So some guys are born and built like Mike Tyson. It doesn't matter what they do; they're just big and strong. Or Anthony Joshua, they're just these really big, strong, powerful guys. And it doesn't
Mm.
matter what weights we lift and what we eat and what we do. I mean, there might be some guys who can get there, but most can't. I mean, most guys just can't get there. You either have that underlying genetic blessing, or you thin and scrawny like some of us.
Yeah, it's a
Which you
it's a
can lose.
curse. It's a curse.
It's a curse.
You're
It
never gonna
is.
get the women as a little scrawn.
No, that's just how it is.
Not.
but but that said, I mean, the one thing that we should be aware of, I think, as plant-based is just the amount. I mean, even for just two things. One is as we get older, we have to maintain muscle mass, simply because as we get older, it starts to deteriorate.
Mm.
And it's really important from a general physiological standpoint to, I think, have a reasonable amount of muscle mass. So that's a good thing to go to gym. Number two is we have to consume enough protein. And of course, there are lots of plant-based protein options, but we still must be aware of, make sure we're getting them in, whether that's in the form of peanut butter or tofu or whatever other form, beans or whatever you're going to eat to get there. But we have to be taking them in.
Yeah. But fortunately, I've never heard of anyone having to go to hospital because of a protein deficiency.
No, we haven't. But if you want to put on some bulk and maybe to that extent avoid injury. So I think having some muscle mass helps avoid injury. I
Yes,
think that you have to have a certain amount of upper body muscle to at least avoid joint injuries. And legs, I
Yeah.
think the same thing. I think if you don't have strong legs, running is a bitch because your joints take a far greater hammering if you've got strong legs. That's my
Yeah.
impression.
Yeah. Well, I did sports science at university, and one of the main reasons for strong muscles is to protect the joints,
Yeah. So
take
I
pressure
would
off.
think that. Yeah, I
Mm.
would think that's the case. I mean, I don't base that on anything other than that's what I've thought. So, yeah, I think some bulking is probably good. But yeah, I suppose you need protein. You must eat some protein to get there.
The without diverging too deep into this discussion around why you're a vegan, because it could just take up the whole podcast. But
Right.
one of the or two of the other things that I've found that can be quite detrimental is your iron levels and also your vitamin B12 levels. They seem to be the two because you technically B12 is
And
not some.
calcium.
What's
And
that?
calcium. And calcium, I think.
Yeah, calcium. A lot of products tend to be calcium fortified anyway. Um,
Yeah, that's true. Fair
so
enough.
there's not so much, but iron is a big issue that people don't realize. So you have a lot of iron deficient vegans, mainly
Yeah.
because not that they're not having enough iron, it's more because they don't realize you need vitamin C with iron to be able to absorb the iron.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Ah, well, there you go. It's lucky we're on this podcast.
No, I learned. I always ate a lot of grapefruit, which I obviously don't do now in the hotel, but I would daily eat grapefruit. So that would probably give me a fair shot of vitamin C.
Yeah, I tend to have my iron supplement with smoothies. So I'll have some iron-rich, uh, like molasses sauce has iron in it.
Okay.
There's dried apricot that has iron. I don't know why it has.
Okay.
Don't know why it has to be dried, but
Yeah.
that's. But yeah,
I
I tend.
remember your I remember your smoothies were really good. They came fresh from your garden.
Yeah, without a blender,
Hmm.
just like that. Yeah, mate, have some of that. All right, what's your first question for me regarding this
well,
subject?
okay. Let me go find my questions. Well, much the same. Sport, right? Did it make any difference in your sport, good or bad? I mean, Rich Roll seemed to laud it for improving his sport. So did Scott Jurek. Did it make any difference to you as a runner?
Um, no, not as a long distance runner, but turning 40 now, I'm actually feeling a lot, well, not as strong as when I was younger, but I'm still able to maintain a level of football that I still played, 10, 15 years ago. So
Similar performance levels?
yeah, obviously in terms of endurance, because obviously that short, sharp change of direction, sprint, jog, walk, that kind of fartlek training style. I think over time you're naturally going to slow down because in the intensity wise, your body is unable to cope as much, whereas someone who does long distance running where they're maintaining a particular pace um, is a different type of training method to that
It
stop
is. It's
start
very
stop
different.
start. But I
It's
mean,
very
like
different.
I mean, like my muscles, my joints, they're still holding up really well. Like I can still change direction pretty well. I'm still doing load of jumping, like real intense kind of um, motions, and yeah, I'm not getting injured. So
It's interesting.
must
You
be
would
doing
know.
something well.
It's interesting what you're saying, and it kind of. I mean, you'd know more than I do about this. You studied it, but you've got the sort of fast twitch and slow twitch muscles. So
Yeah,
long distance running is slow twitch,
yeah,
which seems to be better with age and just seems to, yeah, it seems fine. But if you think, but certainly that others, the fast twitch, you either have to be training fast or training heavy, I'm told,
mm.
to maintain to maintain the fast twitch muscle. Now that's something I've never really been good at.
Yeah. And look, that's why Olympic sprinters, by the time they're into their mid 30s, they're way past their best because the maintenance of fast twitch muscles is very different to slow twitch because the body is unable to keep up the process, so to speak.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Mm.
Um, some good vegan sort of high speed bulking type people. I'm thinking of Carl Lewis, Lewis Hamilton. Um,
Lewis
this
Hamilton, he's a driver. There's no fast twitch in him, unless you call this fast twitch.
well, he has to twitch a lot very quickly to keep going. And
he,
then
he's got some issues as well, where he's like twitching his neck, but that's more because he's trying to scare people off.
and then people like Nimai Delgado, the guy who's caused a bit of the bodybuilder who's caused a bit of a stir, the vegan bodybuilder. Being vegan, he's plant-based his whole life, and he seems to have quite the physique.
Yeah, yeah, and how much for that is genetics, hard work, and
It's probably find a good part is genetics, right?
yeah,
And some hard work, but you can't get there without the genetic blessing.
mm.
Either the hand of God has moved over you and sort of blessed you in some halo of great of great muscle, or else you just don't have it. So let's move on to. Do you have other questions? Do you want to ask me a question?
Yeah. Is there any negative aspects of being plant-based for you?
That's a really good question. I don't think so. I was going to ask you about being plant-based and mood. I don't think you're the kind of person who's. When I say the kind of person, I don't know. I mean, have you? I don't know if you've ever suffered from depression or anything like that, but certainly I often had depression, and I found it I found it helped me a little bit. It helped relieve it a little bit. It actually didn't take the problem away, but it definitely improved the problem, I would say.
Yeah, well, the one thing that I've noticed since I've gone plant-based is how different I am when I wake up in the morning. Like I feel much fresher. Like
Okay.
I don't get up and I'm like, oh, kind of trouncing around and trying to wake up like a zombie. Like I feel quite alive straight away. Like my body reacts quickly.
Well, it's interesting what you're saying is interesting in this regard. One thing it has changed for me though that made me think of when you said that was my perception of the world has changed. I think I've developed a more holistic view of the world. So an awareness of how my choices, and this leads into the environmental question I was going to ask, but how my choices impact others,
Mm.
impact the world around me.
Well, then that's a good lead on to your question.
No, well, it is segueing straight into that. But
Yeah.
that has changed my view because it has made me aware that I'm part of a much bigger system, and that what I choose and what I do does have an impact, and the choices we all make have an impact. And you're very good about that. I think you cycle most places you go.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I tend to use my bike unless I have to use the car for
yeah,
because I have no other choice.
Yeah, so you're aware of all these, of the impacts our choices make. By being plant-based, of course, we have a massive, let me phrase it differently. Those who eat meat, their consumption patterns have a terribly detrimental environmental impact.
Yeah, and that's probably one reason why I continue to be plant-based. Like my journey is quite a weird one because I became vegetarian first, just out of necessity, because the wife's a
What-
the wife's a
that,
vegetarian, and so kind of I ate what she cooked, and then when I cooked what she wanted to eat, and so I just decided, well, I might as well just do as you do, you know, devil you do, or
yeah,
devil you don't, that kind of thing. And I started to realize the health benefits straight away. Like within
right.
a month, I already kind of was like, oh well, like I could already feel the the energy exploding out of my body, and I could feel like when I was hungry, it was like a different hunger. Like,
Yeah,
whereas when I was hungry as a meat eater, it was kind of like a laborious kind of like I don't know how to describe it. Like I know it was almost like, oh, can't be bothered to eat, you know, even though your body was crying out for food. Whereas
right.
when I went vegetarian, all of a sudden it felt like my stomach was free to kind of be a little be more happy. I wasn't feeling so lethargic, and when I got hungry, I was
Right.
like, oh yeah, I can go and eat some more food. So it was almost like food was a good thing again.
I think because our food is less calorie dense, that might be it. We have to process it faster.
Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, without a doubt. Like I tend to eat very small portions, but quite often,
Right.
rather than like I'll have one big meal a day, but between that I'll have not so much snacking, but certainly I'll have a nice cereal breakfast, and then maybe every 2 hours I'll have a piece of toast with some peanut butter or something, you know,
Right.
just to keep me tired and moving, and not getting to the point where I'm getting hypoglycemic and like food, I need food.
But it's interesting, we discussing this, and it's just had me thinking about the other people on the carnivore diet, but I don't think they've got any science on their side. To be fair, I mean, I don't think there's any science against being plant-based. I mean, there's lots of people saying yes, you can be plant-based, but you must be sure that you get your necessary supplements. But there are occasionally people who go on that carnivore diet, but I don't think there's any science in their favor. I don't think anyone says, well, seriously, that's a good idea. I mean, not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I'm when it comes to nutrition, like I don't really I don't really get into discussions with meat eaters about why they're eating meat from a nutritional
Yeah,
perspective.
that's true because there isn't really a good answer to that. And there's no clear science on it either.
Well, look, people have eaten meat for all their life and lived to a grand old age and didn't really have many issues, health issues and stuff like that. But then, how can you determine that someone eating a certain type of meat did or did not create a problem? You know, there's so many more variables involved in
Yeah,
life.
so that's right, and it's a bit like smoking, I guess. Some people can smoke for a while and they die of cancer. Other people, like Keith Richards, can smoke their entire life from when they're 4 years old until they're 98. They can still be playing concerts. How to survive COVID,
And
our life to it.
and we all should be thinking about how what kind of a world we're going to be leaving Keith Richards when we go.
That's right. And Ozzy Osbourne, what sort of world will he be living in?
Funny, but yeah, no. My main discussion when I talk to people, like especially, if I'm going to put all my cards on the table, the reason I don't call myself a vegan is one, I'd be a terrible one anyway, but secondly, I think it's too militant. I think it's too religious. It's like a religion. Like I've
Well,
read
I just want to plug my tablet in. Give me a second.
like the reason I like to have discussions with people, because when I say I'm plant-based, people automatically kind of say, "Oh, well, what does that entail?" Whereas if I was to say I'm a vegan, they kind of look at me and like, "Are you one of those? Are you?" You know, because that's the kind of general consensus out there for vegans. But once you get into that discussion about being plant-based, you can suddenly take it to the direction of environmental concern, because like you've pointed out, some environmental concerns are, for instance, the dairy industry and the meat industry as a whole uses 10 times more land than what you get from a plant-based variety, whether it's
Right,
like
yeah.
a soya milk or
With water, and same with water, and just and with that, of course, goes deforestation and topsoil destruction and all that type of thing. You're quite right. The environmental impact is huge.
but but then at the same time, we have to be careful as plant-based people not to go in that direction as well, because a lot of forest, especially Amazon rainforest, is being destroyed to have soybean plantations.
Yeah, but I think those soybeans, I think about 70% of those are used to feed the cattle, which then are on the feedlots, which are basically used to provide the slaughterhouses with product for the meat-based people.
Yeah, and that could definitely be part of the discussion, but still, being a plant-based eater, you still
Yeah.
have to be aware that you can also have a detrimental effect on the environment. And for me, it comes down to not what you eat per se, but your consumption levels. Like,
I think, Chris, that's a good observation. I think that's the truth, isn't it? That we're all destructive in some way. And the question is, how can I do the least amount of damage? Or how can I avoid unnecessary damage? I don't think any of us can live a life where we don't do any damage, whether it's driving a car occasionally or, I mean, the very lifestyle we lead. We are using video technology, and that uses a large amount of power, and most of that power is generated through dirty sources. I think the effort is to try and do less damage. I don't think we can realistically aspire towards doing no damage short of leaping out a window.
no, yeah, and just having awareness is key. Like that's why I never get into that kind of debate with meat eaters. Oh, well, we were designed to eat meat. Oh, look, fair enough. You know, if that's if
It might well be the case, maybe.
yeah,
But and interestingly, it might be a lot more nuanced even than that. It might be that some people are unable to function on a plant-based.
yeah,
Plant-based. It might be that some people, in fact, do need a greater amount of meat.
and hey, look, I've had I've had certain religious discussions with people where like, well, Jesus ate fish. And I'm like, well, yeah, of course. He hung out with fishermen. Like, of course you're going to eat fish. Like,
That's what you did back then. But
but
also, I think it was different back then, right?
of course,
I mean, I have that discussion sometimes with my Muslim students, and they speak about, well, and we talk about animal cruelty, and they say to me, yes, well, halal slaughtering is fine. Because anyway, then I don't want to get into that whole thing, but I reflected on it for a while, and my impression is the world we live in now is very different to that world. If you go back to 500 or 600 AD, or go around to the time of Christ, you're looking at a time when husbandry was a real thing. You would typically be I think many of the people would have been nomadic. They would have had a flock of sheep or a herd of cattle. This would be their livelihood. This would be their wealth. There would be no destruction. They would kill when it was necessary, and would be fairly rare occasion. I don't think meat formed a huge part of their diet. Whereas today it's an industrialized and incredibly wasteful and destructive process. It's a whole different procedure. I think the type of fishing you did back then was with some crappy shit you threw overboard, and you kind of caught some fish if you were lucky. It was like really a good day you caught something.
The holes were so big you could only catch the big bastards.
The little fish all got away.
Yeah.
But
which is good because that's sustainable fishing right there. You know?
But I mean, today it's an incredibly wasteful process. I mean, I think something like 60% of fishing is bycatch. They just destroy it. It's huge amounts. They throw their nets back in the sea. Something like, what did I read? 60 or 70% of all the plastic waste in the ocean is from the fishing industry. They just
Yeah,
throw
it's a
their
large percentage. I'm not sure what it is, but that's true.
So the way that it's not necessarily that those things are bad per se, although they might be. But certainly the way we do it today is bad in and of itself because we've industrialized these processes. That's why when guys, I have friends who are hunters, when they go and hunt and they shoot a buck and they eat the buck, I have less of a problem with that than I have with a guy who buys hamburgers and then eats a quarter of the hamburger and throws the rest in the bin.
Yeah,
That's it. It's just a different sort of process. If you're going to eat what you kill and you eat all of it, I find that less morally objectionable than the guy who simply doesn't care.
yeah. I've got a neighbour who's like that. He's a very ethical hunter, and he's always asking me if I want to come along. And I'd say to him, "Look, Graham, I don't think it's wise that I come along because I'll run in front of you naked, saying, 'Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Leave the animals alone! Let them roam free!' But they're a pest only because you say so."
Oh, what a picture.
Yeah.
I can just see you around the maypole celebrating in front of someone. Dancing. Frolicking.
Frolicking, yeah, such an English term, frolicking. Right, I've got a next question for you. Let's go in another direction. Um, why should someone embrace veganism? I suppose this kind of encapsulates what we've been talking about, but let's try and be a bit direct. Say someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, "Well, it's all nice that you've been chatting about the environmental effects and."
There's four pillars, I think, of
Ooh.
four pillars. Ooh, four pillars of being plant-based, right? One is human health, and that one's debatable, but it's certainly a lot better than your standard American diet, which I think is a problem worldwide. People eating shitty fucking fast food, their French fries and their hamburgers.
The people here in New Zealand have been going nuts over KFC and McDonald's reopening, and the lines have been going for miles.
We can go stuff our faces in greasy shit. Right,
Yeah.
so I think just that's one. Number two, that's the first one. I think in terms of general health, you're more aware of what you're eating and you're more disciplined. I mean, and could you do that on a normal diet? Probably, definitely. But I think people who are plant-based are just far more aware. And they tend, and vegan junk food is pretty hard to come by. You really have to work to get it. That's one. Two is the animal cruelty and the ethical thing, and there we can talk about that. The destruction of sentient beings just for our pleasure, because that's not out of necessity. Third one is the environmental impact, which we've spoken about. And then the final one, of course, is the one that we're all living with now, and that's that people's insatiable desire to consume animal products and destroy the environment has brought us COVID-19.
Yeah.
I mean,
what a segue. What a segue.
What a segue. You like that. But isn't that true? Isn't it? I mean, there's a Johns Hopkins report from 2007, which says that the majority of the truly virulent viruses and superbacteria are being bred and cultivated in these concentrated animal feeding operations. That's where they're going to come from. I mean, I don't know where this current one came from, whether it's a wet market or a lab. I mean, it depends who you're listening to, but definitely there are lots of them that have arisen legitimately from consumption of animal products. I think swine flu, these various strains of bird flu, Ebola, HIV. Apparently, they all come from. And there's a wonderful clip by Bill Maher that I'll forward you, where he discusses this. All this sort of all the shitty animal consumption, animal products that's giving us these weird and wonderful viruses and diseases we probably wouldn't encounter if we stopped doing this shit.
Mm.
Those are my 4 pillars that when I still taught students, I would teach in those 4 pillars for environmental law. First principle environmental law, should we change the law to tax the consumption of animal products as we do with cigarettes? Because cigarettes we tax because of the external costs, the externalities, and the state bearing the costs of people's pleasure. Shouldn't we also be taxing their pleasure for the consumption of animal products? I think so.
That is a controversial comment right there, Mr. Professor. But you are a professor, so you are allowed to make controversial statements.
Well, I think we're going to get there soon. I think it's inevitable. I mean,
Well, it's the same as highly concentrated sugar drinks.
Yeah, same thing.
Creating diabetes and all kinds of health issues of magnitude. Right.
And if you want to consume that stuff, you must accept it has consequences for the broader society, and you must pay for those up front.
I agree.
All right, yeah. So those are my 4.
I agree because I don't do any of it. So it's kind of easy for me to say in my location, oh yeah, it's going to have no effect on me, so do it. Do it. That's like the epitome of politics, isn't it? Well, as long as it doesn't affect me, do what you bloody well want.
That's right. We'll make those laws that affect other people.
Yeah. Funny. Right, what's your next question for me?
Well, that was my last question.
Oh, is it? Okay. I've got.
Should we? I had a comment about finding places to eat, which I found not a problem in New Zealand, but I found a problem in Saudi Arabia, and I found a problem in South Africa. I was finding places to eat. But my statement was, and wasn't so much a question, it was more just to put it up for debate. Should we be taxing meat in the same way that we do cigarettes and sugary drinks? And I think the answer to that is we've agreed, discussed, and had our survey of the viewership. I think the overwhelming
we speak for the world, and we're all in agreement.
2 wolves and a sheep voting what's for dinner. So
you get my vote. You could be the next Prime Minister of New Zealand. After Jacinda, she's doing a good job.
After I become Prime Minister, and then we'll pass that law, which says that we're going to pay some animal products.
I'll be your muscle, because I'll have been at the gym for a bit of a time then, you know what I'm saying? I'll get the old vegan guns out.
Are you going to be the enforcer?
Enforcer. Corporal punishment.
Right, we're going to tax all of you. Those of you who don't want to pay, we're sending round.
We're sending round corporal punishment. He'll sort you out. Right, you lot, get down and give me 1,000.
It's completely voluntary. You don't have to pay. But if you don't pay, we break your kneecap. But you really don't have to pay.
Yes. But it's voluntary. Funny. All right, well, my last question for you, and this is a bit of a little fun question. Even though I've had lots of fun anyway, but it's always nice to finish off a fun question. If veganism was a sweet treat of delight, what would it be?
I don't know.
Would it be a nice Boston bun, or like a nice trifle?
I like back in the day meringues. It could be a meringue.
Oh, but it can't have any dairy products in it.
Boston bun, bread often has animal products in it. And I think Boston buns might have. I don't know what a Boston bun is, but it certainly sounds like it's a culprit.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. It certainly is. So that's one of what.
As a metaphor, it's the meringue of lifestyle choices. No, that sounds terrible. That sounds terribly wishy-washy.
Especially when meringues deflate very quickly.
It's the banana. It's the firm banana of lifestyle choices.
Oh, we're going back to the whole stiff choice that is plant-based.
It's the hard choice, but it's
The
the
hard
choice.
choice, but the right choice. Funny. Uh, I was actually thinking when I was coming up with that question, I was thinking about this is why I consider myself a poor proponent of plant-based eating, is that if someone was to bake me, say, a cake that had eggs or some sort of dairy products in it, I'm not going to refuse it. One, because, well, it's a sweet delight. It's a treat. Why would you refuse
One,
that?
I like it. And
Yeah,
two, I like it. And
yeah,
three, my humanity is.
yeah. And secondly, I just think it's rude that you would refuse something
I
because
had
of.
that. I had that. It was so bad. You know, there's so many better ways of dealing with that problem. I had this very well-meaning Egyptian neighbor. What a lovely man. He said he came over as a gesture of goodwill, kindness, and love. He said, my wife, out of the very goodness and with the very last savings that we have cooked for you this wonderful meal. Please, it's our love offering to you. And I said to him, look, fucker, here's the problem. I don't eat that shit.
Oh, you're all kinds of
No,
wrong.
you
You are.
might say. I
I
should have
apologise.
said to
I'm
him,
never
and
inviting
the
this guy
right
back
thing
on.
was, and the right thing would have been to say, I didn't use quite those words. I tried to say, the right thing would have been to say to him, thank you so much, Mohammed. I really appreciate what your wife has done. It's a wonderful gesture. I hope one day I can repay it. It's lovely of you to be so kind and thoughtful. Thank you. Instead, I started to explain to him why I can't eat the food, which was so stupid. But you're right, it would plain be rude. Just say, thank you. Khalas, it's enough.
Do you know?
Thank you.
Do you know? Do you know? Do you know what's so funny about this as well? A message just came up on my screen saying your internet connection is unstable, and I was thinking to myself, that's not the only thing that's unstable in this connection.
Yeah, I know, I've got that too. Chris Chick's bandwidth is low. I don't know what that means.
Mate, my bandwidth is pretty poor at the moment, I've got to say. I need to get some more plant-based in me.
You might get a much better bandwidth.
Yes.
Go check out the relevant part of Game Changers.
Yeah. Well, this sounds like a good point to call an end to this conversation. But I've had a wonderful time. Is there any parting words you want to leave for the six people that might look at it and decide whether to actually listen to it?
No parting words, Chris. No parting words.
That's what I like to hear. That's what I like to hear. You're a man after my own heart. Just silent, wicked.
Thank you, Chris. Lots of fun.